you. Can you hear me? All right, great. Okay, so that's some scary and serious stuff. And unfortunately, we are cooking that in the labs today. Well, anyway, so I think that's much more serious. So this morning, I think everyone enjoyed the harmonica show. I think everyone was jumping up and down. I mean, on the back row, a few of my colleagues almost fainted. So here is what Girish would have done, right? All I would have said is, open up your, start your smart phone, go to App Store, download a harmonica app, and start doing this. That's it, right? You don't have to blow it in the harmonica and stuff like that. Anyway, on a serious note, so that's what mobile applications can do, right? So you don't need to play an instrument. You don't need to do anything. It's got pretty much everything on your mobile phone today. So for the next 30 or 40 minutes, so I'm going to spend some time taking you through our IBM's vision of what we're doing from mobile first perspective. Specifically, I'll also talk about the IBM mobile platform, which is work-life product, which I've talked to many of you in different forums and different times about the product. So you might already know some bit of it, but I'll just give an update on what we have done. I'll also discuss a little bit on some of the challenges that we have seen and our customers have seen, maybe a lesson learned. And then finally talk about how from lab perspective and from research perspective, what are some of the things that we are looking at, right? So where the industry is going, and what are some of the patterns that we are seeing in the industry. So this one should be very obvious because I think most of us carry a smartphone today, right? So specifically, I see there are three trends, right? So, or rather three dimensions, right? So there's one at the bottom, which is essentially the evolution of the smartphones, right? So we have seen Apple and Samsung, dominating this industry. 5.6 billion, personal devices sold by 2015. And as we all know, Apple announced, the 6 series just last week, right? So that thing will continue. The next one, which is in the middle, which is, that I think there was a session earlier today on Internet of Things, right? So this is about your smart sensors, monitoring your utilities, electricity grids and stuff like that, right? So that's the second dimension of where mobility is going. The third one, which in last 6 to 8 months or perhaps a year, has exploded phenomenally, right? So this is the one about variable computing, right? Using variables as your extension to your mobile applications. So the statistics I heard was last year it was supposed to be somewhere around 20 million, and by end of next year, I hear it's about 170 to 180 million variable devices that will be sold. So phenomenal growth. I anticipate that there will be as many or perhaps more variables than, let's say, the smartphones that we carry today. So when we step back and look at some of the trends that we see in the market, right? When we talk to customers, so what customers are telling us is essentially, around these 5 dimensions, right? So the first one, our customers are talking to us about transforming their business, right? So it's to their employees, to their customers, to their partners. They would like to transform the engagement, right? Because they know that, we carry a smartphone, everyone carries a smartphone, everyone has a tablet, right? So they would like to, transform the way they interact with their employees or to their partners or their customers. The second one is around context. So I'm going to spend a lot of time today talking about context because this is going to be key, going forward, right? So imagine all kinds of very nice applications that you can think about context. You have geolocation, right? So you have the history of what the customer is doing, and you have the purchase patterns or whatnot. Take all that information and then make it readily available to your customers. So context becomes very critical. Of course, driving revenue and productivity of employees. The fact that the devices are there, they bring your own device, employees bringing the devices. So this would essentially drive the productivity, and that's what our customers are saying. That we would like to use mobility to drive increased productivity with our employees. And the next one, of course, this is much more on the marketing side, where they would like to have their brand presence on the mobile channel as well, right? So they have it on the internet, they want to extend it to the mobile channel as well. And I talked about the last one, which is the IoT one there. So if I summarize, taking those, what our customers are asking us, if I summarize that, this is our vision. Right? So mobile first vision, so we have the 4 pillars: transform existing, the way of doing business, help in transforming that, create an engaging experience to the customers or to the employees, or to the partners, and build. I'll talk about some of the complexities that you will encounter building these applications. And finally, security is very critical, so protecting that connection, from a mobile phone to the backend enterprise. How do you secure that? Is another, the 4th part of the pillar. So I just want to introduce you to some of the products that we have in our portfolio. Many of you might know. Just a quick recap. I'm not going to go through all of them. But the key ones, Worklight 6.2 that was announced. So Worklight product, that's something that I lead. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in subsequent slides. Mobile Quality Assurance, MQA. So this is a product that we launched, which essentially lets you, so if an app is there in production or with the customers, if there's an issue with the app, like let's say if the app crashes, MQA with its SDK collects that information, sends it out back to the server, which if you have configured your source control system, can automatically log a defect and take a screenshot of what the crash looked like, and also pinpoint to the line of code, where the crash took place. Right? This helps you in doing that. So it's a pretty powerful, offering from quality improvement perspective. Test Workbench, Rational Test Workbench. You might be aware of this. So this is the product that helps our customers to test mobile applications. You can record pretty complex flows and replay them back again as and when you change your backend systems. So you can do that on native applications. You can do it on hybrid applications. You can do it on an iPad. Right? You can capture that on an iOS device and run it on an Android device. So this helps you in testing mobile applications, and especially if you have a fairly complex application, it can be a very helpful utility. The next one is TLeaf. Some of you might already have heard about TLeaf. So from analytics perspective, so TLeaf is a product that helps in behavioral analytics. Like for example, if you have an online e-tail application, a shopping cart application, and if your customers are dropping out or not completing your purchase, right? Let's say if you have a shopping cart, they go through filling all the products, but then they're not completing the transaction. So TLeaf will give you insight into what happened, why they couldn't complete. So it takes screenshots of various transactions, optimizes, buffers, and sends it to the backend systems, to the TLeaf server. And then it would show the heat map of how much time the user spent, and you can analyze, and then you can figure out what went wrong, and what's the pattern that customers see, in terms of not finishing the shopping cart experience. So that's TLeaf. And finally, I'll just talk a little bit on Xtify. So Xtify is another acquisition that we did late last year, essentially around push notifications. Right? So if you have an Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, push notification is built into it. So what Xtify offers is the ability to detect things like, let's say if I'm in Jaipur and in this hotel, if I have configured a rule saying that as soon as you walk into one of the rooms, deliver a push notification, Xtify delivers that. Xtify does that at a massive scale. So you can have thousands and thousands of people subscribing for a specific topic and deliver push notifications based on certain rules. And it's a cloud-based offering where you can just go configure and fairly quickly. I've played with this. A couple of hours, you can actually get up and running with an application. So when we talk to customers, I was talking at the beginning. This is how we hear from them that from a mobile application perspective, these are the things that they look at are very critical for them, right? So there is engagement aspect, right? So with engagement, there is the frequency of interaction that the customers are using the application, customer satisfaction, conversion rate. Just talked about the shopping cart experience, brand, and then employee efficiency, right? So these are the engagement elements what customers are looking for. Second one, of course, is application, which is where we spend bulk of our time. How easy to build an application, how easy to manage, how easy to build it across the platforms, right? So those are some of the considerations. And how do I secure the data within the application once the application is deployed? Right? So those are some of the key elements. And finally, security and management is the third and the key piece, especially when it comes to the BYOD, right? So if you have your employees using the apps on their personal phones, how do I secure the transaction between the device and the backend? Oops. Okay, so let me spend a couple of slides on Worklight product itself, on the platform, why we spend so much time on helping our customers, and what are some of the challenges that our customers face, right? So if you look at any application today, if you take any application, they sort of fall on the second row, right? So either the application is installed on a corporate-owned device, right? Or the application could be a BYOD device, an employee-owned device, or it could be it could be running on the device of a contractor or a temp worker or a business partner or your end consumer. Like let's say, if I take an example of a retail banking app, that obviously would be running on a consumer application device. So if you look at the span of control, the business span of control, if we were to talk to the IT head, right, the span of control is very high on a corporate-owned device because they need to be provisioned, they need to be managed, they need to be wiped out when the employee leaves and stuff like that, right? And then it keeps on decreasing when it goes towards the consumer application. So when we map these challenges that IT tells us, right? So we look at from MobileFirst security perspective that if you are talking about a company-owned device, then MDM is the capability that you need, right? So MDM answers that. So where we are going with, if you move to the right, is containerization of the applications. So they would require application itself to be in a container so that the policies can be applied only onto the container, not to the entire device. And then obviously, talking to the backend, you'll have to have a secure transaction talking to the backend. So what customers are asking, or enterprise are asking us, is an integrated mobile technology offering for securing devices, access, and also transactions to the backend. The alternate, and the second one, obviously, is it's got to be either an on-prem or a cloud. They would like to have the choice of both, and also to enable self-service, and complete solution delivered as a service. If it is a hosted one or a cloud-hosted one, right? So these are some of the obstacles that they see, and this is how we sort of categorize the applications and the challenges. So now let's take a look at the fast-changing mobile device landscape, right? So this is where we spend bulk of our time in order to keep up with these devices. So I've got a few slides here that throws statistics. So if you look at this chart, about 200 million devices. Android rules the world, right? So with about 200 million devices end of last year. Similarly, iOS, it goes through these dips, but still very relevant. And then the rest of the ones are at the bottom, right? So very fast moving pace, very fast moving thing here. So when you look at this, if I were to have a mobility strategy for my company, I would say, let me just focus on Android and iOS. I just need to worry about just 2 platforms and I'm done, right? Well, it's not that simple. So look at the fragmentation just within Android. We got Samsung, which is about 47%, and then we got rest of the other vendors that have, small percentages of Android. And they all use different versions, a stock version of Android while building their device. The device capabilities could be different. Like one vendor might have GPS, the other vendor might not. One vendor could have a camera, the other vendor could not. Right? Samsung is on the far end of the spectrum. So there's a lot of market share, but slow penetration of new technology. So another key piece, right? So when I look at this, unlike iOS, right? Whenever the iOS update comes through, like let's say tonight, iOS 8 is out. Everyone upgrades. So we can say for sure about 70 to 80% of all users would have migrated to iOS 8. Unfortunately, that's not the case with Android phones, right? So if you look at the percentage here, right? So we still have Jelly Beans about 34%, even though we have 4.4.4 with KitKats and Android One, right, already moving ahead. But you still have lots of devices running on old phones. We still have the 2.0s, right? We still have the 3.0s. We still need to worry about these because your end users might be using these devices. Screen density is another issue that we see very often because the form factor of the device could be 4-inch versus 6-inch. We still have to worry about the device form factor. So we thought iOS was great, right? Because every time there's a new upgrade, everyone moves to the new OS. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. So if you look at statistics here, so this is for iOS 7, and I'm assuming iOS 8 tonight will look something like this. About 74% of the people, of the iOS population, upgrade within maybe 2 or 3 days. The 24%, the remaining ones, they never. So this was very interesting. I had not anticipated this. I would have seen this over a period of time, like in 2 months, 3 months, they would have moved to iOS 8 or iOS 7 as well. But unfortunately, that's not the case. These 24% or 22, 23% continue to stay in their old, on their old OS. I got to hear a couple of stories around why this might be the case when I asked some of my guys internally. I believe the predominantly, or the most famous answer is if you have a jailbroken device. The jailbroken device, you don't want to move to the next level, otherwise you'll lose the jailbreak on the phone, and then you won't be able to use an iPhone in India, right? So, well, may or may not be the right reason, but just suffice to say that as an IT organization, I still have to deal with these users. I still have to fix iOS 4 issues, I still have to fix iOS 5 issues, and I still have to address the new innovations that are coming in iOS 7 and iOS 8. Okay, that's just not enough, right? So we talked about the device complexities, the device OS issues, the device form factor issues, and we are opening a new front, right? Firefox OS. I believe there was Spice and somebody else tied up, and they are coming up with a Firefox OS. That's a big one for us. We have to go look at. And then finally, the wearable ones, right? So you got the phone, you got the glass, you got the watch, you got all kinds of new smart devices that's coming up there. So let's scope it back again. If I were to do a traditional iOS application, right? How do I differentiate this versus what I've been doing on a standard web technology, right? Well, if I'm doing a web application, how is that different from mobile? So there are a bunch of them, right? One is, your phone is context aware, right? You've got all kinds of sensors. So if you don't use all those sensors, your users might not like your app. If it is just a browsing application on a phone, then it means, your user, your customer would have just opened up a browser and would have done the same thing, right? Why do they need an app for that? If it is app, then the expectations are very high, right? So let's say a simple example could be, I'm in a meeting, if I get a push notification, and if I say that the priority of that notification is somewhere mid, well, don't disturb me. Just hold it there, wait until I'm done with my meeting. When I'm done, okay, just show me the notification, right? So those kind of things. They run on unstable networks, right? 2G. So we have 3G, 4Gs, whatnot on the major cities. But then, you go 40 kilometers from Jaipur here, you're back in 2G. If you have a very heavy graphic application, then, say goodbye, for the app to work, right? So very unstable network that the application will have to run. Small footprint, and these devices are always on. There are a bunch of reasons, how mobile applications are different from your traditional web applications. The key one that I would like to point out here for this group here is faster development cycles. I'm pretty sure, if some of you who are doing this for your customers, you already have realized that, right? iOS has its own schedule, Android has its own schedule, Windows has its own schedule. Every time there is an update, right, you better be ready to release the new update for your app. So which means plan for at least 12 updates in a year, every month, right? So this is something that your vendors, your device vendors are pushing you to release new updates. Now, I heard another conversation talking to a CIO. Apparently, if you don't push updates frequently, then you're considered as a non-innovative company, right? So whether you have any updates or not, you still want to push an update just so that you're responding to your users, you're responding to their queries, making a fix and pushing it. But then apparently how many updates you send also determines how quick you are, right? So you cannot have an app, push it once for the next 2 years, don't look at it, right? So that drives down the popularity of your application. So the holy grail of mobile application and experience. So this one's something that I picked up for Airbnb. It's a beautiful app, right? So if you haven't used Airbnb, you should go take a look. So this is a community-based application where if I own a place here in Jaipur and I want to let it out for a couple of weeks when I'm not there, I could just go put it on Airbnb. Someone who's browsing, who wants to come to Jaipur can take a look and then grab it for me and we can exchange. I can say that, just pay me, $1 lakh a week and then it's for you for the next 3 weeks. So, but look at the user experience, right? All the user has to do is launch the app, go on Google, find the place, pick up the person, contact the person immediately, right? So the power of engagement comes in here. Look at the third one. In-app notifications, by sending a push notification, right? If you know that the person is looking for a place in Jaipur, and he's found out the place, if you're intelligent, if you have a system that is intelligent, can send out a coupon of, let's say, there's a Domino in Jaipur offering some 40% discount. In-app notification, right? And as I shared earlier at the beginning of the presentation, right, some research say that there's a 70% chance that you can convert that into realization of a coupon, right? So again, stepping back to the platform discussion or the Worklight mobile platform discussion, when we look at building such applications, right? When we talk to customers, they tend to focus mostly on the UI side, right? So how great is your product depends on how quickly I can build a very rich application. Whereas when we talk to, when we go through the deployments or when we talk to their actual needs, right? So there is only, UI constitutes only 30% of the problem. The remaining 70% is what goes behind the scene. Sorry about that. There are so many things, especially if it is an enterprise application, right? Not a Airbnb application, let's say. If it is an enterprise application, there are things that you need to worry about what happens behind the scenes, right? It could be user engagement, things like, how responsive is your application, efficient push notification integration, offline capability, whether your application works offline or not, right? When it comes to security, is user authentication built into it, malware detection of the app itself, data protection, right? So these are on the security side. And finally, the operations aspect. You would want to know who has downloaded, how they are using the product. If the app is not behaving, right, do you have those metrics? And have you taken that information and given to the developers to go fix those? Right? So this is how we sort of visualize. So there's only 30% of the UI side, how quickly we can build a mobile app, and there is bulk of the stuff that you need to worry about, which is about fairly significant percentage. So another concept that I want to introduce, I'm pretty sure some of you, who have done mobile app, you know this. So mobile applications sort of vary in this spectrum, right? So on the far right, so which is the mobile browser-based applications. So these are just plain vanilla mobile websites. I just go to m.mycompany.com. There's a mobile version of that app, right? So that's one extreme. You don't have to do anything for that, right? You just build a mobile app, put it out there, your users use it. On the other extreme, are your native applications. So when I say native applications, these are the apps that you download and install on your device, and they are built using native APIs that the vendors offer. Like let's say if it is iOS, then you have written the code using Objective-C, right? If you've written application on Android, then you would have written the app using Java code. Zero portability between these devices or these platforms. So somewhere in the middle is what we call as hybrid and mixed hybrid. So when we say hybrid or mixed hybrid, so what we talk about is you create an HTML version which can be pushed from remote, right? That also has a native layer that talks to the device sensors and gives the experience as if it's a native app, right? So that's the hybrid model, and we have seen lots and lots of our customers using this technology because it just gives the best of both the worlds. And where we've been spending a lot of our time in the labs doing a lot of innovative techniques is to sort of create these user interfaces in native and HTML to be side by side, right? It looks pretty straightforward to do it, but under the covers, it's very complex because you're doing a lot of session sharing, you're sharing a lot of context information, you're sharing the tokens, all kinds of stuff, because one is running in a different layer, the other one is running in a browser, right? So when you have a mobile project, usually you get into these, right? So is it a hybrid app? Is it a native app? I just thought just to give you a, maybe a minute quick rundown on what they are. Okay, a very quick introduction. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because if you've used Worklight, you probably know it, or you might have already heard in this context. So Worklight is a mobile application development platform, MADP or MEAP, some people call. It's a middleware and a pretty sophisticated development tool that gives you tools to build mobile applications for iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Windows Phone, Java ME, both native as well as hybrid. Or if you want to do a mobile web, you can do that also. Pretty fair spectrum of options that you have. And then we have a server component. So server component has a bunch of adapters that connect to your traditional web services, traditional databases, and we keep on adding a lot of other adapters like JMS adapters, SAP adapters, and stuff like that. So there's an app runtime, which is the client-side piece that embeds within your application. So this gives you a secure way to connect to the backend, offline storage, GPS, and many of the client-side capabilities. We have an app store that you can use. Like say if your customers are looking to host the apps internally and not to put them on app stores, public app stores. So there's an app store that you can host it internally. And then a pretty powerful operational console. You can do things like what version of a particular device is this particular app is using, right? So let's say if you have a multi-platform app, you can find out how many iOS users, how many Android users. So that's just one level. You can start drilling much more deeper into how your app is performing, how a particular device is having, let's say if a particular device is having issues, you can pinpoint and then diagnose what's happening on that particular device. And if you know that there's a suspicious user getting into your network, you can actually go and disable that particular device from accessing backend. Pretty powerful operational console. Okay, so in a nutshell, cross-platform, across all the platforms, we have these capabilities, right? So there's push notification out of the box that you get, analytics, geolocation, encrypted storage on the device side, data sync, app security, and I talked about the app containerization at the beginning, so we do that. So by default, you can wrap your app in a container and then deploy that containerized app. So I just want to share this slide. There's usually a lot of questions about why do we need a platform to build and deploy an application. So this is like M cross N problems that we are trying to solve with our platform, right? So if you look at on the far left, we just looked at the different device issues that we have to worry about, which is the range of devices. It's not just a device support, but it's the innovation that's happening in each of the devices, right? So iOS, the new Apple 5 series that came out, now have the Touch IDs, right? So if you want to integrate Touch ID within your application, then you'll have to use Touch ID APIs, right? So there's innovation happening there. So now you got the Apple smartwatch, so which means there's an SDK that you would like to integrate. So we have customers that are asking for, so these are classic mobile banking applications. They would want their customers to check the balance on their watch, right? So they would want to do that. They would like to see notification on a Google Glass, right? As and when there's a bill alert, they would like to see it on a Google Glass. So the moment they get their first application up and running, right off the bat, they come with these requests. Can I do smartwatch? Can I do Google Glass, right? Can I do that? Can I do this? So there's innovation that's happening on this range of devices. Perimeter of your enterprise, right? So this data is critical. So the connection between the device or the wearables or whatever you have with the backend has to be done in a secured way. And backend integration, we at IBM have done it for ages, right? So we're bringing all of that and tuning for mobile channel, right? So JSON is a standard format. Compressed JSON, secured compressed JSON is the data format that has to flow. If I make a web service call and if I get, let's say, 40 kilobytes of response, I cannot shove the whole thing to the device, especially if I'm running on a 2G network. Impossible, right? So we do all those fine tunings at the integration layer, and finally the scale and latency, right? So let's say if you have a mainframe application, a mobile application talking to mainframe, right? Your users will not appreciate if you launch the app and wait for 20 seconds before they see the login screen, right? So latency is very key. So which means you have to have optimizations at various levels, caching at various levels, and all these things. So this is how, from architecture perspective, we look at this problem, like how to solve this, and we pretty much fire on all these dimensions, right? So we look at that, we look at the range of devices, innovation that's happening there, we look at backend integration, we look at security between the device and the backend and stuff like that. Okay, Jorge, I think this morning talked about Bluemix. Again, a large investment in IBM Corporation, right? So every product has to have a real estate on Bluemix. So, you have seen the API catalog, run code, so I'm not going to repeat the same thing, what was described this morning. But look at, the breadth of APIs that are available on Bluemix, right? Look at the services, look at the number of services that we are building that are already out there. All these are mobile ready, right? These are essentially APIs that can be consumed within a mobile application. So specifically, what we released back in June, like 2 or 3 months ago, is a whole set of services called as Mobile Backend as a Service, MBAS service. So it's a collection of services that we released on Bluemix so that application developers, right? If you have very fast-moving startup companies or very fast-moving companies, they could write the application in Node. They could use a Node service, right? Talk to the push service, and they could store the data in NoSQL, which is the cloud and backed database. You can store that data, and then you can synchronize that data on the device because the same data APIs are available on the client side as well. And then there is the application security framework that's around this. I can do the same thing as secure my application, secure my backend, and stuff like that. And it can also integrate the mobile quality assurance I talked about within the same apps. Okay, so in the same context, I just want to touch a little bit on the IBM-Apple partnership because we are sort of, my team and some of my peers worldwide are sort of like left, right, and center of what's going on. So the partnership was around 4 elements. Right? So there is apps that we have committed, and then there's the platform. Right? The apps will have to run on a specific platform. Because the platform is something that we have been building, so we are also extending what we call as MobileFirst for iOS. And the other 2 are basically hosting the applications or provisioning the devices, applications, and stuff like that, and the finance part. I'm not going to go into that detail. But for the OS stuff, for the platform, this is something that we have learned over a period of last 2 years or 3 years doing all the mobile stuff. So we are building an iOS-specific offering or platform, what we call, utilizing everything that's there in iOS. To name a few, CloudKit was something that Apple announced, so that you don't have to by default back up your data onto iCloud, but you can extend CloudKit and then start sending that information onto your own private cloud. Right? That's just an example. So we are exploiting many of these and putting into this new platform, finely tuned for Apple devices or Apple applications. So a lot of innovative stuff that's happening. We were doing already in the platform, and as a multi-platform strategy, we are bringing many of those onto this new platform. Okay, so the next couple of slides, I want to talk about how do we see the next generation of applications. Right? So we did a study earlier this year, and the top 5 connected apps projected by 2020. This was pretty interesting. Right? And again, obvious ones. So this is where the experience of mobile users with your IoTs, right, and your backend all coming together. Right? So if you look at the first one, right, so that's connected cars, very obvious one. I get close to my car, and I should be able to open the car with just a press of a button on my phone. Right? Once I'm inside, I can do many things using my smartphone. Turn on, turn off the audio, and Bluetooth is available on BTLE. You can connect to your car and do whatever you want. Connected cars, right? The next one is clinical monitoring. So we know the variables are, coming there. So I should be able to have a sensor, right, with me, a wearable, a Fitbit, let's say. Right? My doctor should be remotely monitoring, how my, heartbeat is and stuff like that. Right? If there is an irregular pattern, the doctor should be able to diagnose quickly and then notify the patient, let's say. Right? So similarly, there's security, assisted living. I think the last one was kind of, interesting. Right? So I'm not sure, if it is relevant for us here in India, but in the US, right? So let's say if you want to buy an insurance, right? You don't want to buy, or let's say if you want to tailor the insurance, right? Driving insurance, you can think about that. I want to step inside the car, I'm covered. I step out, my coverage is over. Right? You can do that with a lot of innovative ways of doing things. So there are a couple of examples I have listed here. Augmented reality for in-store purchase, smart home controls. Again, some of these things are already there. Restaurant recommendations based on geolocation and stuff like that. I think where we are looking at, from lab and research perspective, is taking the engagement to the next level, right? So look at the things that you can do today, and then how this can evolve. NFCs are already there, right? So I can use my phone with an NFC chip into it to complete a transaction at a POS terminal. Right? I purchase something, use my NFC, and finish my transaction. But you start looking at what your phone has, using location, using touch, using speech recognition, right? No wires if you have BTLE, you're Bluetooth enabled. The text spoken, your eye tracking, and finally, using the cameras on the device. Taking all these elements on a phone, what you have, within your application, you can create amazing use cases. Right? You can address amazing use cases there. And this all ties back into the context that I was referring to earlier. Right? But then, of course, the amount of data that you are generating could be enormous. But if you have a very intelligent system, okay, I don't want to say Watson, but yes, Watson-like system, you can create amazing use cases. So, which leads to, right, when we did a survey, when we talked to many of the CIOs, I apologize for very small font on the right side picture, but basically what it says is many of their customers, many of their users of the application are saying, don't treat us as dumb endpoints. We are living beings, we do things, and your phone, my phone, has the intelligence, so use that data, right, and come up with right recommendation. The example I gave is, if I'm in a meeting, right, don't ask me, I'm in a meeting, so don't call me or don't bug me. You figure out. It's there in the calendar, right? You figure out. Or if I'm in a particular location, if I say that, I'm not to be disturbed, then you figure out that don't disturb me. Right? So things like that. So it's something called as a pattern, like a me era. Me meaning I, me era. Right? Look at me. The app is personalized to my experience. You know what I'm doing, and then based on that, give me the recommendations. So basically, what we are looking at, these patterns emerging is detecting from various sources, connecting to the backend, and looking at the historical data that you have, and then evaluate conditions and trigger actions, and then execute the logic. Okay? So some of the patterns. The other one, right? So car insurance. Let's say if you are driving, S-Class or a Ferrari, and if your insurance company is worried about how you drive, where you park. Like, let's say if you go in a neighborhood, which is prone for thefts, and if you park the car, your insurance company might know that you've parked there, right? So they might as well say, just go about 2 kilometers from there. There's a parking lot. Can you please go and park there? And then send a coupon by saying, hey, here, there's a free parking coupon. You don't have to pay for this, right? So again, this is location, intelligence, all built into it, and also giving that experience to the users. The other one, right? So this is a banking example. So for bank, how do they make money? More transactions, right? And always connected or always logged in and using the application, right? That's how they make a lot of money. So for them, right? I mean, especially here, if you look at SBI application, or Canara Bank application, ICICI application, many of the apps, mobile banking apps that they do, they are paranoid when it comes to security, right? Every 20 seconds, the app logs you out, then you have to go back, log in again, right? You do something, and then again you want to use the app, again you have to log in, right? So what if we take authentication or verification to the next level? Again, you have sensors, right? A combination of biometrics, face recognition, gestures, fingerprint. I can use all these elements and I can keep you logged in, right? And then I can help drive more transactions using my mobile app. As soon as I launch my application, right, if I have a front-facing camera, right, I can take a picture of yours, do a quick face reco, and I can let you in because I know it's you. Perhaps I might not allow you to make 10 lakh money transfer, right? That's again a layered way of looking at what I can allow you, but I can allow you to at least check your balance, right? Or I can do a transaction less than 5,000 rupees. Right? So these are some of the things that we're looking. the other one, right? Secured multimodal authentication. So I talked about using facial gestures and stuff like that. I can combine those with what you're doing based on a situation, right? Let's say I'm driving and I want to make a quick payment, right? At that time, I know that I can use voice to authenticate you, right? So let's say I have gloves on, I know that I won't be able to punch in, right? Can I use gestures to log you in, right? I should be able to do that. And similarly, if my hands are busy, right? Can I use iris or can I use just your, authenticate using your eyes, eye patterns? Same thing, bad light, right? I cannot see what's happening on the phone. Can I use voice ID? And then if I'm in a public place, right? So then I'll force you to key in your user ID. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, right? Of course, the standard multi-platform, multi-device support and stuff like that are sort of, how I should say, commodity that every MIB should have. But I think where we are helping our customers with that extra value add is bringing some of these things from the lab and the research, what we're doing onto the platform. Okay, I think that was my last slide. So I have maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, no, somebody signaled me, I'm done. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be around, happy to answer. Thank you.